Good morning, good afternoon, and good lunchtime, depending on where you are in America. Hello, my name is Alex Handy, Senior Editor of the Software Development Times, welcoming you to this webinar from Melissa Data and Pentaho about turn big data into smart, trusted assets, how to do that. Our panelists today will be Robert Smith and Patrick Bain. Robert Smith is an enterprise sales engineer at Pentaho, focusing on Pentaho's enterprise accounts from Washington, D.C., New York City, and Boston, up to and including Canada and Quebec. In addition to technology, Robert has a background in business with a focus on financial services and looks to see where technology can get data rendered into meaningful information to tell a story. Key customers have included J.P. Morgan Chase, BNY Mellon, Credit Suisse, and General Electric. Prior to his tenure at Pentaho, Robert was a middleware and sales engineer for several years at BEA and then at Oracle. Patrick Bain is a data quality analyst and software engineer at Melissa Data. He works closely with clients to analyze their data quality issues and provide solutions that fit their business needs. As an expert in his field, he frequently authors articles focusing on maintaining data quality and integrity. And Patrick holds 2 Bachelor's of Science degrees, one in computer science and the other in management information systems from Arkansas Tech University. So now, without further ado, I will hand this over to Robert. And before I do so, I will remind everyone that the videos and slides of this presentation will be available afterwards. Robert, take it away.
Hello, friends. This is Robert Smith. Yes, I'm going to get rolling here. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through our presentation, then we'll have a question and answer session towards the end. So please keep your questions. We'll love to take care of those towards the end of the hour. So taking more of a top approach to the issues at hand, staying clear on the focus, it's about the business when it comes down to it. You know, we focus on technology all day, every day, but it's really a means to an end. So when you're trying to get projects funded, get projects put through, be successful, there are 3 major points that you want to be able to check at least one of them. As you see here, raising revenue, cutting costs, and mitigating risk. Those are the things that where the business initiatives tend to lead. Now, how do they do that? Well, what you'll find is that a lot of these requests for raising revenue, cutting costs, and mitigating risk, you'll see a lot of these have been around for some time. A single view of a customer. That's one of my particular favorites. I consider that to be somewhat of a unicorn, and I say that because unicorns are often discussed and seldom seen. And it gets more challenging over time because customers are becoming more complicated. We have professional lives, we have personal lives, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Some of it is structured content, some of it is unstructured. It's getting more challenging over time, but the focus of what the business is asking for is at its core basically the same. These go back, as you see here, they go back decades. So what's really new, it's really the quality, quantity of the data underneath, and you'll see a bunch of V's here, and there are probably a few more out there that are going to make their way onto the list as we exhaust the V section of the dictionary. So the idea is that this is where the evolution is coming, this is where the revolution is coming, and this is where the tools that are coming out to help do this are going to get folks closer to their business goals. So what we've run into here is that the decisions that folks made in the past are not staying relevant to where people are today and where they want to go because we keep moving the goalposts on people. So what we end up running into is the story in college. And the question is, what keeps the kids next year from cheating? Well, I said, well, we changed the answers. That's kind of what we end up having to do because the business is asking basically the same questions, but we keep coming up with better and better answers to solve these needs. So that's where having a regular review of the innovations in technology can really help you keep a competitive advantage. And one of the places we see a lot of that ends up being in the open source community, and that's a place where Pentaho has played from the beginning. So being able to stay agile and stay on top of these innovations in technology is going to really help you stay competitive. You may see in the industry a number of companies will say it's all about the data. Let's look at the data. Is it really all about the data? Well, not really. The data in and of itself is not useful. Data is an opportunity to be mined. Now, when you mine it, you're applying business logic because you're looking for specific things with a specific process, and that turns that data into information. And that information is what's going to lead to the insights and the actions that are going to help move your business forward. And that process, that business logic process, is what Pentaho and Melissa Data are eager to talk about today. So when you hear folks saying it's all about the data, well, a lot of them are looking at visualization packages and reporting packages. These sorts of tools have been out for some time. And as much as some of these visualization technologies are on the tip of the tongue of the industry, the core technologies go back a really long way. So for those old ledger-style reports, long before I was around, these printed reports were making their way back in the 60s. Spreadsheets, if you didn't mind working on a mainframe, these things were available in the early 1970s. And then when you wanted to turn spreadsheets into visualizations, well, if you remember Harvard presentation graphics or Harvard graphics, that was 1986. And then combining those into a dashboard of those visualizations came soon afterwards. So the fundamental concepts are really not new. What has evolved is the demand of those. Yesterday's news wraps today's fish, so to speak, what we read in the newspaper yesterday. From the interfaces, those are becoming easier to use, but the data underneath it is mushrooming. You may have seen a number of infographics talking about the explosion of data, the explosion of content, and that's going to continue to accelerate, and the demands of it will continue as well. Back when thousands to hundreds of thousands of rows of data, if you look at the spreadsheet model, those rows in the spreadsheet, that was enough at one time. But now we're getting up to what you might hear about data lakes, which may have terabytes or petabytes of data. That's where the state of the art is moving forward. Now, in manipulating the data, it used to be you got a printed report. That wasn't interactive. Well, maybe if you had a highlighter. But today, people want to be able to pull it up on screen, and they want to be able to work with those numbers because the analysis is an iterative process. You may ask for specific things, but then as you get the results back, you may want to ask for something else. So you go from a static to a dynamic paradigm. Then you'll also see in the industry a lot of interest and excitement around predictive modeling, the ability to look for insights to help you get off the tracks before the train hits, so to speak. Typically, you've been able to go after historical data with business intelligence tools, you slice and dice, but that's not enough anymore. People have access to streaming real-time data, and that, when positioned with and correlated with historical data, can really help you triangulate and make your predictive models reliable. So from that perspective, that's where we see a lot of folks going. And then finally on the bottom here, you'll see structured, and then there was unstructured data. And it used to be those were two different worlds. Those two technologies, it was structured or it wasn't. Well, that's not true anymore. It's not black and white. It's shades of gray. And with scoring and blending, we can add some color to that gray to help you get to those insights more quickly. Now, with this explosion of data, the issue is that it tends to break the technologies you see up top, and that's even with contemporary versions of those technologies. Some of the customers that I've worked with, and I know Patrick has seen this as well, is they tell me that, well, when I use my spreadsheet tool, well, actually we'll start with the print reports. When I get more than a few thousand rows of data, it's a book. It's hard to read, hard to use, and it goes out of date. So that's pretty easy. Spreadsheets, the ones that you tend to use today, I have folks telling me that those don't like going over 100,000 rows of data, and then the hourglass doesn't come back. It just doesn't work. Now, visualization technologies, some of the contemporary ones, the ones that you tend to see a lot of, I'm told those tend to go south at about 250,000 rows. Better, but when you're dealing with petabytes potentially worth of information, this is a drop in the bucket especially. And that's just from a volume perspective. I haven't even covered the other V's like veracity. So what breaks these things as well from those V's perspective is bad data quality. And this is where I'm very happy to have Patrick Bain on the line with me, because I have some ideas as to what people are running into, but he's going to be able to pick this up and take it a few steps further. So, Patrick, would you like to go over some of the details of bad data quality?
Yes, thank you, Robert. Very nice job. So I have customers come to me all the time, and looking through their data set, they not only have incorrect data, but they have incomplete data, unstructured data, like they don't know where they have missing information or obsolete data. And most of this cannot be fixed only with reference data sources. And let me give you a statistic here. 2% of records a month on average become obsolete because of death, divorce, or marrying or moving, among other things. So that's 2% per month just decay in your database. And then according to the TDWI, almost half of all companies, they don't have any plan for managing data quality. So what's that mean? When you try to go do dashboards or get intelligence on who your customers are, or trying to do other things, these tools are going to break. They are not data prep tools. That is what Pentaho does. And they are not data quality tools, because that is what Melissa Data does, using the reference data that we have. And you'll see that in a little bit once we get into the demos. But I do want to point out that data quality problems, they cost businesses on average about $600 billion a year in the U.S. And that's not including, that's including staffing costs, but also the inability to make sound decisions based on accurate information. And that is, how do we know it's accurate information? It is based on that reference data.
Very good, Patrick. What I'll do is on the next slide here, I was going to take a step back and say, when you're looking at visualization technologies, it actually starts to look a little bit like 1996, and here's where I'm going with that. If you are dealing with business intelligence tools that only work with structured data, this is why people say, well, is it structured, is it unstructured? Why is that no longer black and white? Why is that now a shade of gray? Well, here's where the black and white came from. Structured data was basically, if it's in a spreadsheet, if it's in a database table or multiple database tables, it's very strongly formatted. You know, you have your field names on the top, the values underneath, and that made it pretty easy to take that data, bring it into a data warehouse or multiple data warehouses, and then when you wanted an extract of that, you requested a data mart, and then you would build your ledger style reports and your visualizations off of it. What about unstructured data? Basically everything else, Word files, PDF files, HTML, those sorts of things were considered to be unstructured because it wasn't a table. So what happened then is you would have a search engine index the content and then make it searchable, where you would be able to search and then it would score that content and sort that content based upon what you were looking for. So they were really two different worlds. Now, if you're using a SQL-based analytic or reporting tool, this isn't 1996. This is today. This is 2016. So what Pentaho Data Integration and Melissa Data can do is to break down the wall to where unstructured and structured data can be used together. Here's where we go from black and white, the shades of gray, and this is where we can help you add color. So unstructured data would be something like a Twitter feed, for example. 140 characters of text. So from that, that's a little bit of structure. You know, maybe it's like a 10. Whereas if you look at the top of this, where you might have a data warehouse with a third normal form data warehouse, that'd be more like the Empire State Building, very structured, very solid, and that is something that you would be able to now combine with relatively unstructured data. Now, I mentioned the Twitter feeds. We actually have the ability to go through a Twitter feed and read it and parse it. And you can actually go through it, and we can, with some of our technologies around Weka, we can do scoring. So that way you can score whether a particular tweet, for example, is more or less relevant to what you're looking for, like the old search engines, or you can even score it for sentiment analysis. We have demos which we could show you, at a follow-up session, where we're able to go against Twitter feeds, score based on whether it's positive or negative, and in this case on a particular stock, And then you could sort based on most positive and most negative and look for insight to see if it's time to buy or sell that stock based on unstructured content. And then you can also correlate with that with structured information like stock ticker data. So in this case, this is how we're able to get unstructured and structured data to work together. Now, what you'll find is that the more data you bring in, the bigger the need and the bigger the opportunity to apply data quality principles. Garbage in, garbage out. Doesn't matter where it's coming from. It hasn't been validated, enriched, duplicated, all those good things, then it's not useful. So what we have the opportunity to do is to partner with Melissa Data, and between the two of us, we can help you get those insights. Because at its core, you just want to go from these sources of content, potentially structured or unstructured, to this. That's the goal, right? So what we need to do is to help you get past an obstacle. What's in the way? From here to there? Raw data. And in this case, we had started to talk about that on a prior slide, but at its core, if we can help you resolve the data issues, then you can start to correlate and blend and build get the insights out of the data with your visualization tools, but only if you can apply data quality principles. So how do we do this? We apply data quality principles with data integration through the entire journey, through the entire pipeline of the data. And in this case, what we have is the full pipeline. Now, I had mentioned from the prior slides, in this case, data engineering is getting the data in, and you have an opportunity to cleanse, validate, enrich, standardize the shape of the data so it's easier to compare across sources, those sorts of good things. And that is when you're optimizing for storage. So we mentioned data warehouses love things like third normal form, where you only enter everything once, but you are spreading things across potentially dozens to hundreds to thousands of database tables in star or snowflake schemas, and it works very well for storage. Data lakes, you may hear about with Hadoop, those are very good at storing massive amounts of data in things like the Hadoop file system, but it's spread out. Now, what happens when you want to consume that? When you want to bring those up in analytic technologies, you want the opposite of that. You want a single flat table so that when you're doing your slice and dice on that table, you get that lightning fast performance that when they demoed that product, that's what they were working on. They were not pulling data out of the data. Or I can guarantee you they weren't pulling it out of data lakes and unstructured content and other sorts of sources of information. So going from optimizing for storage, so then optimizing for consumption. And both, as you bring it in and as you take it out, you have opportunities to handle data quality. And the reason I say this is that you have the opportunity to apply these principles as you bring it in, as I mentioned, and then as you bring it out. And then you can do this as an on-demand model. Two of the biggest issues with enterprise data warehouses, when you want to take that data warehouse where all your data is, and then you build a data mart with it where it's just the cut of the data you want, the moment you create that, two issues, two big issues. There's others, but the two big issues, it goes out of date if you can't keep it synchronized. And it goes out of spec because someone gets the data and then they realize they want something a little different based on what they saw. So what we'll help you do together is to provide self-service, on-demand data marts where when you request those, you are able to then apply at the last minute those data quality principles so that the data is as current and as correct as possible to help you solve the issue. So that's the journey that the data takes, and that's the journey that Pentaho and Melissa Data would like to take you on. Now, I'd like to take a couple of minutes to describe who Pentaho and Melissa Data are, and then, my favorite part, we're going to get to show these products in action. So, at a high level, what Pentaho is, we've been around about 11 years or so. You may have heard of Pentaho Data Integration and Pentaho Business Analytics. So we'll go after any data, do any work to it, and render it for any type of downstream consumption. So it doesn't matter whether it's batch, real-time, relational, flat files, queues, cloud, it's all there. And from a simplicity perspective, those are the two products. If you go to our website and you want to download those products and you want to use them, that's it. There is no special big data edition. There's one edition. It does everything. There is no special adapter library that you have to pay for. There's no Perceive. There's nothing crazy there. It's really just a data integration and an analytics platform. And then the other two exciting features that I want to point you to before we move over to Melissa Data is that we're open source, but what we call open core. So we took the open source product and we added some additional enterprise-grade features, security and the like. And we're built on 100% Java and JavaScript, but that doesn't mean that you have to know any. So what that means is that folks like Melissa Data are able to write first-class, high-quality plugins to leverage their services, both on-premise, meaning you can call out to Melissa Data, and you can even bring that source content on-site and run it locally. There's security and performance advantages there, and the ability to work it within your big data ecosystem. And I'm excited to have Patrick show you some of that in a few minutes. And then finally here, from an enterprise-grade perspective, what is enterprise-grade? And that means that this is a product that we can say enterprise-grade, but our customers who are enterprises are getting enterprise-grade performance out of the product, 24/7, 365 support, consulting and consultants that have done this for on the big data side for over 6 years and on outside of big data for almost 11 years in some cases. They will not be learning at your expense. So, and then on top of that, training. Because this is a top-down drag-and-drop product, within a few days of classes, without coding, you can hands-on get pretty handy with our technology. So moving on a little bit from a component perspective, and you can see where Melissa Data fits in up top with plugins. We'll get a chance to show you that later, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. But the top four are Pentaho data integration. The bottom three are the Pentaho business analytics components. So moving on, you can use these components to do, and these are some of the use cases where we have referenceable customers to help you with them. Now these should look familiar based on the raising revenue, cutting costs, and mitigating risk categories the business was asking for, as we mentioned in the early slides. We'll be able to show you how we can actually help provide these in a referenceable way at scale in many cases. So, and to do that, we partner with folks like Melissa Data, where together we're able to do these things in a way that you would be hard-pressed to see other folks do. And part of the demo that Patrick's going to show you is showing big data, sorry, I'm still getting used to it myself, big data quality. We'll be able to show you that in a moment or two. So at this point, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Patrick Payne to give us a little more detail on the Melissa Data component.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. As Robert mentioned, we utilized that open source technology a couple of years ago and started building components to work easily and with no configuration required inside Pentaho. And as you see on the screen, here's just a couple of them. We have more coming out all the time, but to quickly go through them with you so you kind of get a feel for what they do. Contact Verify cleanses and verifies that an address exists for U.S. and Canadian addresses, and also for phones and emails. So our phones callable, our emails valid and mailable, and also name parsing and genderizing. For the global scale, we have the Contact Verify component. Again, with name, address, and phone verification, and we'll tell you that they exist and they're callable or mailable. Also for emails, this has mailbox validation. So you know that Patrick at melissadata.com is an actual real email that gets email messages. Next, we have IP Locator that can append various geographic entities to an IP address. Matchup component, that's our deduplication engine. Now, this can be used not only with contact data, but data that you have that might not be contact data, because you can customize the engine based on several fuzzy algorithms and data types to build matches on your data. Personator component, it's our engine that combines not only it combines multi-source data from places such as credit agencies, subscription agencies, other places, and through essentially a distillation process we kind of get a single view of a person. So what's that allow us to do? We can input a phone number and append an address, or we can append an email, or put an email in and append the name and phone or address. So we're really looking at the contact record as a whole. And this is something that a lot of competitors don't necessarily have. I mean, this allows us to get better uplift on our data where we normally couldn't. Maybe, and I'll show you in a minute in the demo, but the premise number to an address, if someone omits it, we can append that premise number, whereas other places would just say, hey, this isn't a valid address. And the profiler component, this does hundreds of different rows and columns of information based on the input data through it. So what am I talking about? Nulls, what kind of data type is it? Does it look like an address? Does it look like there's duplicates in there? Percentiles, and just a whole bunch of different metrics on data. And that helps you, of course, when you're ingressing data into your system to know what your data looks like so it doesn't break the system, right? Or maybe after you've done the data quality process, you can compare the before and after to get, you know, is this really working for me? And there's more to come. As I mentioned, we have other components coming out soon. A property component that appends property information like mortgage, the owner, the property, just various different property values. A business coder component that will append company information, who the CEO is, emails, sales volumes, how many, what's their staff, along with Twitter accounts and everything else. And there's also going to be a generalized cleansing component that is going to cleanse not only contact data, that's what we specialize in, but we're going to branch out into other data and allow you to create rules based to cleanse your data. So what's this allow us to do? It allows us to quickly and easily introduce data quality into our applications and processes. And as you see on the bottom of the screen here, we're essentially a plugin in Pentaho, and that allows us to not only leverage their automation, but their connectability. They connect to various different data sources, from flat files to Hadoop file systems, as well as just many other ways that we can cleanse and correct our data and automate that and do it at scale. So it's a very exciting product, and I can't wait for the demonstration we have.
Well, thank you, Patrick. That's a good lead up for us to jump into the actual product itself. We can say anything in a PowerPoint slide, right? So let's show some of this stuff in action. So what I'm going to show you first is the Pentaho data integration tool. Just give you a couple of minutes tour of what the product is, and then we'll actually show a sample transformation running. And then what I'll do is show some what we call model-driven exploration of the data. And then, a couple of things later, we will be able to show you how Melissa Data takes it a step further with the plugins they provide. So, what I have here is, you'll see a palette on the left here where I mentioned we can get data from pretty much anywhere. You know, flat files, JMS, you know, Salesforce, text files, table input for any number of different databases. We have big data connectivity out of the box. You know, Hadoop, Mongo, HBase, Cassandra, a whole lot of good things. Now the data quality stuff, you're going to see Patrick will be making this dance in a few minutes. But this is a sense as to what you can drag and drop off the palette. And this is just for starters. What we have is we mentioned that Melissa Data is in the marketplace. I'll just very quickly show you that. What this is when folks write plugins, like say when Melissa Data wrote theirs, they submit those to Pentaho. We take a look, and of course we loved what we saw, and we put those up on the website here. So this means that within Pentaho data integration, when I saw those, I just clicked the install button, restarted the user interface, and I had them. So in this case, I looked at Melissa Data, and there are my plugins. Now I can see that they're not only installed, but up to date. So it's a nice, elegant process for adding plugins from both partners, third-party consultants, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you this page right here is showing you a transformation. We have the idea of jobs, and jobs can have one or more transformations in. And that's where you would get scheduling and the like. So in this case, I'm just opening a file of customers. So I just give it a name, and from the file, I just hit Get Fields. These popped up, and then I was able to preview and see the data as it comes through. I said, you know, show me 5 rows or something like that, and I can start to see on the table that there's some issues here. There's no such place as Fishtail, Connecticut, but the postal code looks right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to peel out city and state, and I'm going to do a lookup to get some correct ones. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run this, and you see I can run it local, I can run it remotely, or I can run it clustered for scalability with or without Hadoop. Again, it's the same version, and Patrick will show you some more details there with what he built. So when I run this, and this went pretty quickly, you start to see the preview steps as the data moves through. But what's also cool is we have the ability to track the metrics, the performance of this transformation, so I can not only fix it for functionality, I can optimize it for performance. So let's take a look at the previews as it runs through, and I say, okay, well, it looks like it opened the file fine. Now I want to remove bad city and state data, so I'm just going to remove these 2 fields. I click here, success. What was involved there? Sorry, changed screen resolutions here. So I just basically chose off a list which ones I wanted to remove. How did I know what those were? Where did they come from? They came from the prior step. Those actually came from the prior step. So, and then I say I want to trim my zip codes from 9 digits to 5, because that's what my lookup here is. I'm just using a local file, not a Melissa data. You'll get a chance to really see this take off when we use his. So in this case, postal code goes down to 5. Now I do my lookup off a file, and off to the right here, we're going to see the correct city and state. Then I pop that out to a database table, and this is kind of cool because I just basically point to it, and I can browse, and I can see where things are. And if I wanted to actually create something, like I wanted my SD table, if it doesn't exist, I just hit a SQL button, and it creates the SQL for me, and then I can change it to whatever I like. So I say execute, it's in, great. So now when I go to browse, I see my tables. Now I have my SD table. Note that it's now lowercase because Postgres doesn't like lowercase. It only likes lowercase. So when I clear out of this, I can see that the data looks the way I want it to now, but I'd like some more insights. I'd like to be able to slice and dice this before I give it to my analysts, because if this has issues with it, then they're just going to bounce it back at me. So what I can actually do here is I have multiple perspectives. This is in the Enterprise edition of our product. This is all Enterprise. I can go through, and there's a visualize and a model editor. So what this means is that I can actually right-click this, and I'm going to say visualize. So you see the perspective changes to visualize. This is in the data integration tool. It's a great preview. So you'll see that it said, okay, I can look at credit score, and I can look at state, and I can start to look to see how those things are going to work. So, okay, there's credit score. Let me look at that by state. And the wizard actually did a pretty good job, and it's almost all correct. So you'll see the credit scores are added here. I'd like an average. So because it built the model here too, I can just hit this. You see the perspective changed from originally data integration, now visualize. Here's the model. I can go look and say, okay, well, it was right to say the credit score is a measure, but I'd like it to be an average. I just change that, and I save it. And then I can pull up my refreshed visualization, and I refresh it here. And then what this is going to do is it's going to put the data through the new model, and then I'll be able to get, now I see I have averages. Now I can go through and I can start to score this. Let's see, top 10. Okay, that's great, by credit score. Now you'll note that I can mouse over this, and so I can double click to show city. That means there's a hierarchy around geography that was built automatically. Let's take a look at that. So what it does is that when I run the wizard, the model editor saw the names and it said, I don't know what those are, and it put those into the geography hierarchy, for in this case country, state, city, and postal code. Now if I wanted to have different ones, or if the names didn't pick up, I just drag and drop them over. I can do geography and time automatically, or I can have arbitrary ones, relationship ID, party ID, account ID, and so on. I would just drag and drop those and name them. So I can do it all here. And I can do it for analytics, which likes star schemas. Or I can do it for reporting, you know, the standard ledger style reports, which doesn't have the same requirements. I can do it all from here. So going end to end, I can see that I can then go here and I see my table, but I'd like to visualize this. Now, I know I was showing you pie charts earlier. I figured I'd show them here too. So here I can actually see that I can go to a place like Hawaii and I can double click down and I can then drill into the hierarchy here as well. So now you see that I'm able to start to do model-driven exploration of my data inside my data integration tool. And then when I publish that out to my analytic tool, I know it's going to appear because I had a chance to see that in advance. Now, a couple of quick things, then I'm going to turn this over to Patrick. This is what I call a hard-coded transformation, meaning that the endpoints and so on are all hard set, and the shape of the data, as you see, is all hard set, names, city, and say. A very exciting bit of technology we added is someone said, well, can I define that at runtime? Because if I could have a dynamic transformation, then I could replace dozens to hundreds of hardwired transformations with one or more dynamic transformations. And you can. So when I open these, you'll see that these have little diamonds. What this means is these can be parameterized or set at runtime. So what that means is that when I go into a transformation, like I have another one here. This one is just open a file, choose some values like we did before, and then put it out in a database table. Well, I can actually, if I open this up, you'll see it says file name, it's blank. I'm going to set that when I run it. So that way it's a configuration-based solution. So how do I do that? Now, follow with me here. You'll see CSV file input, select values, and table output. And these all have settings like lazy conversion. Now, this transformation, use meta-inject, is actually reading information dynamically and then putting it into those same 3 steps. So those 3 steps. And you see things, remember there was lazy conversion and so on. So you can set all these things dynamically. And one of my coworkers who used to work for another company, by going from the hard-coded model to the dynamic model, I think they went from 1,000 transformations down to 6 dynamic ones. It was a very exciting thing. So just to bridge back to the data validation, now one of the things you can do is you can certainly run data quality against the entire body of information, and you may want to do that especially when you first bring the data in. Don't trust any of it if you don't have to, right? But what you can actually do is be more specific with it. So we have steps like data validator, which lets you do things and say look for nulls, look for specific values, and if those rules are not met, then you could invoke data quality. But this is where we get things started, and this is where Melissa Data really takes us a few steps further forward. So what I'd like to do is to make Patrick the presenter and have him show you a few of the exciting things he's built on top of Pentaho Data Integration with Melissa Data. Can we make him the presenter, please?
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Robert. An awesome demo. I want to kind of draw on Robert's demo, and let's build something from scratch, but using a Melissa Data component and see how easy it is. I already have some database connections here that I want to use. So let's just use some of these sample data here. And as you saw before, it's super easy. I don't even have to write any SQL, actually. So let's just pull data out of our customers database. All right. We'll look at it in a bit when we run this through Melissa Data. Let's pull our personator up. And then all we have to do is connect them, and then we map them to our input fields here. So as you see, there's a free-form input. This is useful for those customers going on from legacy systems that don't necessarily have delimited data or contact data records. So I can put address, name, phone, city, zip, all of that in one line. And because of our domain knowledge or knowledge about contact data, we can parse those out and standardize them to the standard format. But while we're here, let's just go quickly map these here. So I don't want company coming in, but I do want to map full name here, customer name, and we're going to accept that. We're going to choose our actions, and these actions tell us, or they help us bring back reference data. So the verify will tell us what pieces of information correlate. This is useful in fraud detection, right? So we can tell you that the phone is associated with the address, or the phone and person are associated with the address, and it's very useful in that. Append takes it a step further, where we're actually appending missing contact data. So if you have gaps in your data, maybe you don't have phone numbers coming in, or maybe you don't have a name for an address, and you want to append that. We can choose append, and we'll append those missing columns. And there's also a move option, which it's more of a proprietary change of address. So we have algorithms behind the scenes that you can make it looser or stricter in its algorithm. And there's a myriad of other options that you can choose, from how the name comes in, how you want it to genderize it, how you want phone numbers formatted. Do you want the USPS preferred city? For instance, Sundance in Utah has the same zip code as Provo. Do we want that vanity city name of Sundance, or do we want it standardized to Provo? And if you're doing reporting, you would probably want all that grouped in with Provo to make your reports a little bit more accurate, as well as other email options. Output, this is where we get to choose how we want the data output. Do we want United States of America spelled out, or do we just want USA? For this demo, I'm just going to choose some of these demographics here. So presence of children, occupation, income, we can do that sort of thing. And also I want to pull out, while we're at it, pull out the geo-coordinates, latitude and longitude. Now these are down to the rooftop level. So I can say add group, and it's going to add it down here to my output. I can choose to rename these columns, but for brevities, I'm not going to today. Get fields, I can choose to pass through everything I have here untouched, or I can filter them out. For this, I want to pull some of these limits out, and then lastly, we have kind of our inbuilt filter here. So we're just going to leave it the same. Let me output this to the table, and I want to show you kind of how this runs here. So let me open this up. I already have a connection named here. So let me get my schema here, and then I'll make a new table. We'll just make a new one, actually. Oops. And as Robert demonstrated before, I don't even really have to write SQL. It pulls those values out, sets everything pretty much how I want it. Except for this last field, let me execute this. And now let me hit OK, and let me run this. So we'll save it. So right now it's running through the service, and we're appending. We're not only correcting the addresses, but we're appending the missing information. And that's what I want to show you here, are before and after, because that shows you the power of the reference data. So let's go to the table input here, and we'll go to preview data. So as you see here on my bottom screen, I'm missing premise numbers, I'm missing phone numbers, I'm missing cities, I'm missing zips, states, and and other various information. And these addresses aren't formatted well. So when we go to the table output, we can see that we have names that are appended. We have the street addresses that have the address is fully complete and standardized correctly. We have latitude and longitudes down to the rooftop. Email addresses appended. We have date of birth, demographics, household income for these people, whether they have children or not, and length of residence. So very quickly and easily we can add this data to help our campaign intelligence or help us get a view of our customers if we're wanting to do that. And like I say, this can be applied for our business coder coming out, where we can get information based on the businesses that maybe we have in our data set. And the possibilities are endless. Like I say, we have, let me go back here to the preview. We will code everything and tell you if it's a valid address or not. So you see here ASO1, that tells me that's a valid address with the USPS. PSO1, that tells me that number, that phone is callable. It's 100% correct. And if I have VR codes here, that tell me what pieces of information correlate. So it's very quick and easy to get that intelligence. So we can also, I mean, with this, as Robert showed, I won't go much into it, but we can build our visualizations by hitting right-click. It's going to open the report. Maybe I want to change we'll change the credit score here that I have to be the average. We'll save that. We'll pop back over here to the visualization, and then we'll add it to our graph here. And as you see, we have all the credit scores now populated. So it's very quick and easy to get graphs and reports and all this campaign intelligence here. So we can pull up the bar graph here. So we can tell the graph here. So what if we have an ongoing process? I've built out another run here where it's listening for files. As a file listener, if a file's dropped in this folder, it's going to grab the name and run it through my personator process. And you can see here I'm running it through case statements. I'm adding columns here, shipping columns. I am filtering rows based on results codes, and I'm sending it to valid and invalid based on that. And it's very quick and easy to set up. And now, what if I want to schedule this to run? I can just go here to the scheduler. I can say, well, let's schedule it on a certain day or certain times, and I can add that to the list. So let me just change this here to 4 a.m. So we'll add that, and then we can go up here to the perspective, and we can see what the schedule looks like. So you can see my personator demo. I've scheduled it on Tuesday, May 3rd at 4 a.m. So it's very quick and easy to set up these data quality projects and initiatives in Pentaho using Melissa data. And like I say, we are using reference data. This is not algorithm based. It's not any kind of based. It's based on reference data that we have. Now, you might ask, how easy is it to scale up? Well, we can not only, so these components all support, we can change number of copies to start. Maybe I want 8 copies of it to start. So it's going to distribute that amongst 8 copies right there, right away. It's going to utilize the resource on a computer in Hadoop. How do we do that? So it's fairly quick and easy. There's not coding required really. So right now, in this is just kind of setup here. I'm setting up the Hadoop. I'm just copying files over to it, my test file I have. And then in this MapReduce step, I set my project. I say my mapper is called input, and my mapper output is called mapper output. I tell it to, and you can tell what kind of Hadoop instance you're going to run on, whether it's Hortonworks, whether it's Elastic MapReduce, or even Cloudera. Let me cancel out of this. And so so that mapper is pointing to this file. So I have my MapReduce input, which is the key value pairs that are synonymous with Hadoop. I am going to split those key value pairs into my address, city, state, all of the contact data fields. I can run them. I can map them in Personator here. So we have that. And then on output, all I have to do is concatenate all of that information that I've returned, whether it's postal code or anything. So I want to reiterate, there is zero coding for Hadoop. It is all drag and drop, GUI based. So there's not any learning Python or any other languages really. And it's something that this runs on the cluster, and I'll show you that in a minute here. And like I say, there's no special editions either. You're not paying more to get this functionality. So let me hit run here if I didn't mess anything up. And it's going to go out there, and let me go out here to my job browser and see. Let me refresh this, and you can see that it's going to be running here. So we have Patrick, it's accepted. Oops. And you can see it running out there on the cluster. And you can see the progress, and it's native. It's running on Hadoop. And I mean, think about the security. You're not dragging, and it's not leaving the Hadoop cluster. It's just, and it can scale with that Hadoop cluster. So you can see for every point of the way whether we're running simple data files from various different sources, or whether we're running on a Pentaho data integration cluster, or even on Hadoop, our components will run anywhere. And that's what makes this whole system powerful, is that it makes data quality achievable and fairly easy with, in conjunction with Hadoop. So let me pull up to reiterate, we, along with Pentaho, have removed all of these roadblocks that we talked about at the beginning. I mean, we're getting correct data because we have those reference data sources. We're getting complete data, again, because of those complete data sources. Unstructured data is able to be read in because of those file connectors that Pentaho has, and on down the list. So it is fairly quick, it's fairly easy, and it's easily achievable within Pentaho. Robert, do you have anything to add?
No, this is great. So what we were hoping to show you today is you've heard of data quality, you've heard of big data. Now you have quality big data, and what we've been able to show you is that it works to automate at small scale, and it's the same stuff that helps you automate at this point practically indefinite scale. We're built on MPP principles, or massively parallel principles. So that means that there's no single point of failure, and we have customers working with over 100 nodes of Hadoop on Amazon MapReduce, and it's the same software that we just showed you running on our laptops. So what we'd like to do now, if we can, is turn things over for the question and answer session, and we have a few minutes left, and definitely appreciate everyone's time today. Alex?
Excellent. Thank you very much, guys. It's time to put those questions in out there if you have them. I will start with one we already have. Is Melissa data included in the open source edition of Pentaho?
Well, thank you, Alex. That's a very good question. We have functionality out there on the open source edition of Pentaho, but our components are packaged together with the enterprise edition. So we have functionality for our Personator component up to 250,000 records on the open source edition, just for that Personator component. All of the other ones, the matching, the deduplication, all of that, one has to subscribe to the enterprise edition to get.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit more about the open source edition of Pentaho itself? What license it's under and so on?
Okay, I guess that would be for me. Now, what I showed you today is the enterprise edition of the product. So we do have a community edition, and we do have an enterprise or subscribed version of the product. So what you will get with the subscription is a superset of what you would get with the community. So you're going to get additional security, additional administration, additional functionality, things like JMS connectivity, WebSphere, MQ, those sorts of things. And on top of that, we mentioned you're going to get the 24/7, 365 support, access to consulting resources, access to training. All of those things are specific to the enterprise edition of the product. So what we find is that there are a lot of folks who will get started with the community version of the product, and then over time, as their needs grow, they'll need to get that support, that level of enterprise grade backup from a company like Pentaho and a company like Unstructured Data to do so. But what we also will recommend is that if you think that there may be an opportunity to show some real value, take a look at the enterprise version of the product first. And if you end up not needing the enterprise grade features, then we have many folks out there who are happy with community. But we can help you with the evaluation if you look at the enterprise version of the product. And if we can help you solve some real work, really move the bar forward on those, raise revenue, cut costs, and mitigate risk, we can succeed together.
Okay. Next question. Who are some of your current customers?
Okay.
Yeah,
absolutely. So we have a lot of customers who are public references, and if we can get you under non-disclosure agreement, there are a lot more who are also references for us internally. We have a number of some of the largest banks on the planet will come speak at our Pentaho World event because they're getting massive returns. So that's one where what we would like to do is follow up with you, and based on your industry, we'll be able to give you references not only in your sector, but in places where we see folks really making some cutting-edge solutions on top of our product. So we'll have folks like Marketo, Rich Relevance, and a bunch of others, and then we can certainly build on that as we go forwards.
And for Melissa Data, we have customers in pretty much every market and every segment of the industry, from small mom-and-pop operations to large multinational corporations. So some that I can mention are like the University of Washington, the City of Tempe, Atlanta Braves, Cal Optima. So there's a whole bunch of customers that use us for data quality because they can use us everywhere. Not only are you getting us in Pentaho, but if you have a Salesforce dashboard, you can use us there. If you have if you have a front end somewhere, you can code to our web services. So it's really, you're getting data quality. It's going to be standardized in all those places when you're, yeah.
This is Robert. I just had to go to our latest public references, and that includes ABN AMRO, BT, NASDAQ, Halliburton, CAT, Rich Relevance, Ruckus, Wireless, EDO, and there's many others. As I said, we have about 1,500 paying enterprise customers, and a very large number of those are happy to talk to people.
Excellent. Next question. For Hadoop MapReduce, can we edit the existing one created by Pentaho, and will it be possible to run our own MapReduce job?
We're not closing any doors. What we're doing is we're providing an additional opportunity to automate. Now, a tremendous amount of the jobs that we have that we put up there are configurable. So what that means is that mappers, combiners, reducers, custom parameters, all of those things can be modified, and those configurations can be moved easily from environment to environment. If you do want to get in under the hood a little bit more, but what we would want to do is figure out what you're looking to accomplish, whether it's from a functionality or a performance perspective, to make sure that what we build together is indeed the best solution for scalability, for performance, and for functionality.
All right. I believe that does it for our webinar today, exactly on the dot at 1 hour. Thank you, everyone, for coming and attending. Thank you, Robert Smith and Patrick Bain. I'm sure that they will be happy to speak with you after this event. And again, the slides and videos of this will be made available to you after this event is over. once again, from everybody from SD Times, and I'm sure from everyone at Melissa Data and Pentaho, thank you very much for attending. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.